The U.S. has reached a trade deal with the EU. What's in it?
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Yubico, makers of the YubiKey. YubiKey helps protect important digital applications and services. YubiKey, still undefeated, the original passkey. More at yubico.com.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore, in for David Brancaccio. The U.S. and European Union reached a new trade agreement over the weekend. President Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen made the announcement after a meeting in Scotland. As has been the pattern with recently announced deals, a lot of details still need to be filled in. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer joins us to talk about it. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning.
So the deal, we don't have a ton of specifics, but what are the basics?
Right. Well, the deal sets a baseline tariff of 15% on most EU exports to the U.S. That includes cars and computer chips. The new rate is supposed to take effect this Friday. But this was a verbal announcement. The two sides didn't issue any papers or releases. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the 15% tariff does include pharmaceuticals in general, although that's, quote, on a different sheet of paper.
Okay. The EU also agreed to invest a whole lot of money in the U.S. and buy more U.S. products?
Yeah, the deal calls for Europe to buy $750 billion worth of U.S. energy products, plus, quote, hundreds of billions of dollars in American weapons. Again, Sabri, the details need to be filled in here.
Mm-hmm. There are still negotiations on certain products, I understand, like alcohol being one of them?
Yeah, the two sides have not reached an agreement on spirits, and that has been a major bone of contention. And remember, Sabri, this agreement still has to be approved by EU members, and U.S. tariffs on imports of steel and aluminum from the EU are still at 50%. There is talk of a quota system, but nothing is final on that either.
All right. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Meanwhile, U.S. and Chinese officials are set to meet in Sweden this week for trade talks. A trade truce between the U.S. and China is set to expire August 12th, at which point tariffs on both countries would spike. The Financial Times is reporting the Trump administration is relaxing controls on technology exports to China as part of the negotiations. All right, let's do the numbers. Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are all up in the 2 to 0.4% range. Dow futures up 39 points. The yield on the 10-year Treasury is 4.4%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Progressive Insurance, providing direct car insurance rates side by side with other insurance carriers. Customers can see rates and find an option that works for their needs. Now that's Progressive. Learn more at progressive.com. And by Rubrik, dedicated to giving businesses the power to bounce back fast when cyber attacks target the cloud. More at Rubrik.com.
Certain types of government data have disappeared. Other data is at risk. Funding has been tight for years at the agencies that produce a lot of statistics. Those would be the Commerce Department and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But since the Trump administration took office in January, threats to the availability and comprehensiveness of federal data have reached a whole new level, affecting everything from national health and crime statistics to key economic reports. Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman has that.
Last September, Drew DeSilver, an analyst at the Pew Research Center, clicked onto the Office of Personnel Management's database to find out what percentage of the federal workforce was Black or Latino. After the Trump administration took office, he checked the database again and got a rude awakening.
The diversity module, which included all the racial and ethnic breakdowns, that has disappeared,
making it more difficult to figure out how massive federal job cuts are impacting Black and Latino workers. OPM didn't respond to questions by our deadline. Denise Ross, who served until December 2024 as United States Chief Data Scientist, says this is part of a broad pattern across federal statistical agencies.
The targeted surgical removal of data sets or elements of data sets that are not aligned with the administration's priorities.
Ross, now at the Federation of American Scientists, has been tracking these changes.
NOAA's billion-dollar disaster data set has been terminated because it's talking about climate.
Another example?
CDC's National Notifiable Diseases Surveillance System, removing questions related to sexual orientation and gender identity.
There's another way federal data is being undermined, says Steve Pearson at the American Statistical Association, across-the-board job cuts, which he estimates at 15 to 40% at some statistical agencies.
The biggest impacts so far have been just the reductions of force, which are collateral damage,
leaving fewer trained statisticians to sample, survey, and analyze results for error, seasonal or regional variation. This, combined with funding cuts, is starting to impact core economic data, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index, says Michael Strain at the American Enterprise Institute.
We've seen the government do less field surveys to come up with official measure of consumer price inflation. And that's just because they don't have adequate funding.
Strain says that matters because
if the government slightly mismeasures consumer price inflation, that can mean spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Social Security payments that it shouldn't be spending.
In an emailed statement, the BLS said it remains confident in the quality of the information it produces. Former BLS Commissioner Erica Grosjean says the agency has so far maintained the integrity of its most important economic reports on employment and prices.
They're trying to preserve the quality of the headline numbers that drive monetary policy, appear in long-term contracts, while adjusting to having real staffing and resource issues.
She says in the face of ongoing budget cuts, BLS might eventually have to stop publishing some of its other reports, tracking Americans' long-term labor market experience, occupational injuries, and even job openings. Its data, she says, can be crucial to American businesses, workers, and policymakers. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
Park, all streets are going to close for Lollapalooza setup. The music festival